Veronica. Thank you so much for joining me today for the podcast interview. And we already know each other for a while now. And so would you like to introduce yourselves to the listeners?
Yes, sure, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast, first of all. And I am, as you know, an educator who teaches adults the crucial life skills, primarily in the area of relationships and gender communication. So, help women and men in really achieving the greatest success and potential through knowing how to communicate, how to put their thoughts across in such a way that is understood by the opposite gender, and also how to relate to people in such a way that they have a very deep and meaningful connections.
It's amazing what you do, and I think it's so important, this topic you actually help people with, because especially in the field of work and especially as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to actually work on our skills with relationships and communications, because I think like there are so many opportunities we don't actually take, or we actually block because we don't really communicate that well, or even maybe some relationships suffer because, like, as an entrepreneur, especially at the beginning, we tend to overwork a lot. And so I always like get people asking me, wow, you have actually 2 businesses, how do you manage that, how do you do that with your partner? And I guess you already know like so many people who have similar issues. And would you like to share a bit more how you actually got into this field?
Yeah, well, as most coaches, probably my story is not any different, because I got into this field out of my own frustration, that I realized that relationships are everything, whether it's our personal life, whether it's the way we do business. Really, in as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you know, it's all about relationships, because people don't do business with some entity, people do business with people. So it's the more we're able to relate to other people, the more successful we become in every aspect of our lives. And I have been always understanding the impact of our ability to relate and communicate with others, but I was so frustrated with the lack of education in that field. Because why don't we learn all of this at school? Why don't we learn how to relate to others, how to communicate to others? It's just such a crucial life skill which we don't really learn. And as I was starting my own relationships and got married, I was realizing what a lot of gaps I have in the area of how do I relate to my husband, how do I communicate my needs, how do I ask in such a way that I don't come across as nagging or needy, and at the same time he understands what I want from him. How do I relate to people in the workplace in such a way that they don't see me just as a pretty face, and there's credibility, there's authority, that I communicate my ideas and they also heard and taken seriously. There's just so many gaps and so many in my own skills that I felt when I was much younger that I needed to bridge, and that when I started learning everything I can find on the planet of Earth about relationships, I have built up a great amount of knowledge which I'm now sharing. And I'm not saying that I'm a final product. I'm still work in progress, and I by no means an expert in any fields. I'm a lifelong student for sure, but as I said, out of my own frustration, I've realized that we need more education in this area.
I think it's always amazing if we actually choose to get something and like have some experience, and then actually have others to go through it much easier. So like if you are talking about like relationships and communication skills, and it's all really important in life, and especially when working on your own as an entrepreneur. So what do you actually think is like one of the most crucial skills, or like a skill set an entrepreneur should actually have?
Of course, it starts with communication, how we communicate with other people. It's pretty much where the relationship starts, because we don't relate to others without communication. So one of the most crucial skills for entrepreneurs to have is understanding different communication styles, making sure that we don't make an assumption or a mistake of thinking that there's only one right way of communicating. Making sure, especially that's the area that I'm passionate about, making sure that when we do business with the opposite sex, we take to consideration the different approaches to communication, different motives that the men and women have in their styles. And I obviously, by no means I want to gender stereotypes, or I want to bring any any to put any labels on any genders, but we have a substantial research that provides evidence that men and women do think different and communicate different, and they have different motivation when they communicate. So for any entrepreneur, knowing non-verbal communication, knowing verbal communication, knowing gender differences in communication is crucial, because people read us in the first few seconds, how we come across, how the first impression that we make, the warmth, our voice is very powerful, our tone. There's just so much that as entrepreneurs we need to learn and be really, really skilled at.
And like I know, like, because I really want to ask this question, because like whenever people see that Dennis and I work together actually, and it goes really good. And so like many people are like, yeah, hey, that's amazing, but I am struggling with this actually. So I have a partner, I work on my own business. How do I actually manage to find a balance between like my relationship and also work? And how are they better to like, how is it easier for them to communicate to their partner that they need time for the business, and really need enough time to actually build it and work on it?
Yeah, so there's two parts to your question. The first one is that how, when people work together, when two people who are in romantic relationship also have a business relationship, but how do you find a balance there? Because you obviously see each other in two different capacities. And so that's the first part of the question, and I'll answer it in a minute. And the second part of the question, how do you balance in general your relationship with your business? And that's obviously how much time you dedicate and how much energy goes into which, and what is the balance there. And so the first question about being in a relationship with your partner, of course, requires a lot of discipline. And I'd love to hear your success formula, because obviously you're doing something right with your partner when you manage obviously to be romantic partners as well as business partners. But with the absence of that discipline, a lot of people would struggle to actually not to have these two overlapping, because that provides an additional challenge. Because in business, you both, in essence, you both the same, you're in the same operating mode. And I call it, some people call it masculine energy, feminine energy. Some people call it with the archetypes of hunter and gatherer. So in business, you are two hunters. You go in for your goals, you focusing on tasks, you looking for achievements, you have deadlines, time frames, and so it's very different energy. Whereas when you are together as lovers, you need to be in the polar opposite. You need to be in, you need to have that polarity to have, okay, now I'm a woman and now you're a man, and we're no longer business partners who are just, you know, banging their hands and getting things done. And the task, the challenge, and where it requires a lot of discipline is to have that transition. Okay, so we do work together, now we're finishing our business side. Now we're switching. Now we're just romantic, because I'm sure you know, if when you work together, you tend to discuss business at dinner, on the weekend, on holidays. So my advice to people would be, okay, so separate the time. Okay, almost like 9 to 5, we are business partner. 5 to till the sleep time, we are romantic partners, and have that separation and have that transition. So now I'm a woman, so you can have the duality and polarity that you need to have that intimate attraction, the spark that normally the couple have for that. Because when people are in the same mode, they tend to lose. They could be very emotionally connected, but they might. The danger is that it might lose the sexual attraction that polarity generates when they are two completely opposite, when they are remain men and women. So that's just, I'm not saying it's impossible. You're obviously doing it, and you get the balance right, and it just requires a little bit of thought, and a little bit of discipline, and just making sure that you draw the line that, okay, now we're not in business, we're just man and woman, husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend. And that's just my recommendation to your first part. The second part, which is how do you balance, and I'm going to be talking on behalf of women, because it's for women, we tend to find it's when we find it more challenging balancing business with personal life, especially when there are children involved. It's you know, there are a lot of men out there, they're fantastic fathers and spend equal amount of time with children. Children still come to mom more often in most cases than they come to dad, so she's got a little bit more on her plate in general. So business, again, it requires transition from that mode, and okay, I'm now coming home, I'm a mom now, I'm a woman, I'm not wearing my business hat on, and that requires maybe an hour of just doing nothing after work, zoning out, making sure that you're actually now, okay, I'm going back to my family, I'm now in relaxed, there's no deadlines, there's nothing chasing me, there's nothing, it's all going to be starting tomorrow. And it's importance of transition from one mode to another, I would say.
Yeah, I like that you say like transition, and that it might even like take an hour to actually, and so like I know that because this podcast it's mainly for female entrepreneurs who also have an online business, so many of them, they actually work at home, and then I already know that some are always like struggling with like actually making the time for themselves. So like really self-care, and maybe like just relaxing or doing a workout, but also like finding the time for the business, because especially I think if you work at home, it's probably harder, because sometimes you are at home and some maybe even have children, and then it's probably even more tricky because you can't actually like go out of the house and just leave everything there and then you come back. So is there any like, do you have any tip how they can actually communicate with their partner that they need to have, like, for example, like certain times during the day where they can absolutely focus?
It's absolutely crucial, and for so many reasons, that me time is actually the most productive time for any entrepreneur, because I have delivered a workshop last year for Business and Professional Women of Malta organization, and it was on work-life balance, and they had a similar problem. I can't take an hour to myself just doing nothing. I would feel so guilty. I have so many things to do. How can I take just 1 hour of do nothing? And when I explain to them that consider that 1 hour of doing nothing as your most productive time, that's the time where you regain your strength, where you become more efficient. So just to remove the guilt factor, so if a woman thinks that she can't take time off, if she can change her way of thinking about that time off, in the sense that this is the time that I'm taking so I can be more productive, more efficient, stronger, and more creative as well. And in fact, I started, so my tip for actually scheduling that is to put it in your calendar. I'm now put it in my calendar, and I actually put it, like, I started with 20 minutes and now I'm increasing into an hour a day where I actually do nothing. And by do nothing, I mean do nothing. You actually you just zone out. No books to read, no meditations to make, no yoga, no nothing, no. It's literally just zoning out and being in your thoughts. And I started to schedule it, because if you don't schedule it, you find yourself doing a lot of other things, and just time just goes by and you realize I've just spent a day and I haven't had a chance to stop. So schedule do nothing time, and make sure that you do nothing. So walking or reading a book or doing something else actually doesn't count. So you just do nothing. It's a complete zone out time. And my best business ideas, my best aha moments, my best workshop and training courses were born during that do nothing time. I can't even underestimate how valuable that is, because I wouldn't have my best training courses now if I didn't have that time where I just spent nothing and I had this, like, the most amazing idea, and I just, obviously after the time finishes, I just write it all down, and it's super valuable. So that's just part one. You said that it's finding the time of doing nothing, and you also asked me, how do you communicate that to your partner, and how do you actually make sure that they understand that this is something they need? The partner normally, a masculine energy partner or partner in a hunter mode, they will know what that means to you, because they need, if a woman needs a zone out time, meaning she does nothing. A man typically needs a masculine energy partner, because there could be women who are more playing more masculine roles in the relationships. A masculine energy partner typically needs a transition time. So a hunter needs a transition time, which means that they go from meaningful activity to something completely meaningless. And by meaningless, I mean they could take a remote control, sit by a TV and just flick completely without any thought crossing their mind. So they need to have a transition time, which would take them from very hard focused and a lot of intensity in the brain, from a very low intensity activity, so that they could just be doing something that doesn't require a lot of thinking effort. So to communicate to your partners is actually by honoring their need for the transition. So for example, if a woman is working from home, her partner might be working outside or also from home, and they have their own rooms and they meet somewhere in the middle. Ideally, she allows him his transition time where he's just not disturbed by clicking the TV or doing something else, and she have her zone out time. And to her, she needs to make sure that she communicates to her partner that during the time she can't be disturbed, so she can't be answering any questions, or because if she sits and nothing, sometimes he assumes that he can come and talk or ask questions. And when you allow each other transition time or zone out time, it is something that is going to be super valuable for the relationship, because don't jump on your husband the moment he comes home, so you can share what happens in your world. Allow him to have his half an hour or 20 minutes or an hour, even depending how intense his day was. And the same for women. We both really need it. And just communicating to the partner to tell them what it provides for you. So not just say, I'm going to sit here and in a zone out zone, but just like, I really need this time so I can be a loving, warm partner for you. And that is something that I'm sure you're going to take very, very seriously, and don't disturb you during that time.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think there's lots of value inside. And I also like that you said you maybe you can start slowly, for example, like starting with 20 minutes and then increasing it, because I think like you said, like many feel actually guilty if they like do nothing. And I think it takes some time to kind of get used to it, and maybe even still these thoughts come up, but I think it's amazing how actually this time helps oneself to really like reflect and also be more focused. And like you said, like some of the greatest ideas actually come up then. And I can totally relate to it, because to me the same happens. Like usually the best ideas and the most like intense thoughts and moments is like when you actually do nothing, and then suddenly something super amazing comes up and you're like, wow, yeah, that's super cool. I'm going to do that, or yeah, that's the answer I was looking for. So I can totally relate to this. And at the beginning, like even before we started with the recording, we were also talking about like alignment and values. And I think that's also something like super important in communication with others and relationships, like whether it's business or like more like romance related. So would you like to share a bit more about like maybe the importance of values, or even like alignment in work, like work related things as an entrepreneur, but also in a relationship?
Hmm. So alignment, when we talk about alignment and values, so it's when it comes to the personal relationship, we of course talking about compatibility, because many people, when they select the partner, they're quite often driven by the chemistry that they have with someone. So if there is a very strong chemistry, they mistake it with values, or they mistake it with, okay, this person is great for me because I have such a strong feelings for them, but it doesn't mean that we are necessarily aligned with values and with our vision for life, our goals, how we want to live, where we're going to travel, the journey that we're going to be. It's life path journey for each and one of us. So when we talk about values, it's one of the most important aspects of a romantic relationship, to make sure that we are with someone not because we have a chemistry. Of course, when we have a chemistry, fantastic, but it's not enough just to have a chemistry. We need to make sure that we share with someone whose life path is moving in the same direction, so we can actually strengthen each other. We can support each other's life goals and vision, and ensure that we have a complementary skills that we could tap into each other. And really, when you think about relationship, it's the best incubator for personal growth. There's nothing that can get you faster where you want to be in terms of your personal development than getting into a relationship with a partner who can support that growth. And that is ideal case scenario for a personal relationship, to make sure that you have, in addition to chemistry, a great level of compatibility and communication, so you can support each other in your personal development and your growth. People don't become entrepreneurs because they want to just have an easy life. People become entrepreneurs because they have a calling, they have a mission, and that they want to add value to the world through the skills that they have, the expertise, the knowledge. So it's great when you have a partner who is committed to your success as an entrepreneur, as well as you are committed to his, and there's an alignment there. With regards to a workplace, I find that it works the opposite, because the more diverse people you have on your team, or in your peer group, the more likely you are generate ideas. The decision making is much more productive, and the team is more effective the more different values and different backgrounds, different skills and expertise you can bring. So I would definitely, as an entrepreneur, I would aim for a really strong alignment in a personal relationship. As much diversity, not too much so there's too many conflicts, but enough diversity to actually spark that creativity and innovation and decision making in a team and cohesion, because you need just a little bit of conflict to have that creativity. And I think creativity is a very strong currency in the new world.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for the great insights, and I really loved all the information you gave and the tips. I think that's really valuable for many who are listening. And before we come to an end, I would love to ask you like 3 questions I ask everyone in the podcast. And the first question would be, is there any like book or any like favorite podcast or anything like your favorite source of actually listening or reading to?
When it comes to personal relationships, I absolutely love 2 women who were instrumental to my learning when I started my journey 10 years ago. So, and these 2 women are Dr. Pat Allen and Alison Armstrong. I find them absolutely, it's just a well of knowledge, and it's endless. They constantly come up with more and more insight in how men and women relate to each other. When it comes to entrepreneurship, there's just too many. I can't think of one particular person. There's just too many. I'm constantly reading so many books and I can't think of one.
Yeah, but you already gave like one cool tip, I think, regarding the relation part. So I think that's already great insight. And maybe some of them actually want to search for it now. Is there like a saying or a quote you live by, or any sentence that's like has a really strong meaning to you?
Good question. I had a quote which said, "Live, love, and laugh." For me, it means a lot, because no matter what happens, we need to live the life to the full, and we need to love ourselves and love other people in our lives. Love, obviously, I'm all about love, and my whole my whole career is focused on making sure people love themselves and love others, and love is important for me, because I like to add a lot of sense of humor into anything we do, because when we start taking ourselves too seriously, that's where we start to be too afraid to make mistakes, start to be too afraid to be playful, too afraid to take risks. And we should never be too afraid to be playful and not to take life and ourselves too seriously, so we can contribute to others, and have to be most valuable ourselves.
And if there would be like one thing you could actually give to people, like you had a magical wand, what would it be?
If I had a magical wand, I would give to people is knowing how to relate to others with compassion, with depth, with kindness, and with a lot of generosity. And that, of course, starts with self. So it's compassion, generosity, kindness, and love, connection to self, and connection to others. That would be my magic wand, because we would live in a very beautiful world if we were able to love ourselves and love others as well.
Great, thank you so much. And I loved actually what you would want to give to people. I think that would, yeah, like you said, would be a really beautiful world. And so thank you so much. And if people now who are listening, like any woman who is listening, would like to actually know more about you, what would be the best place where they could find you?
Yes, they can find me either on my website, www.veronicavazeri.com, or on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/relationshipschool, or on my Instagram, which is @Veronica Vazeri. So I am available for one-on-one online relationship coaching sessions, and also available for to be booked to deliver a webinar, whether it's for their enterprises or for personal training as well.
Thank you very much, and I'm wishing you a great afternoon.
Yes, and to you too, Lisa. Thank you for having me on your podcast.